And we're back with part 2 of Antlers, picking up with Amanda Rustick's surprising comments. Now, those of you who don't know, Amanda is in, I can't even keep track of 3 of my classes this semester, Amanda, much to my delight and good fortune, because you always add a lot to the classroom and write interesting papers, as does Nicole and Amelia and Kezia, and I can't remember anybody else because you didn't do the discussion board. Anyway, sorry about that. You're all good students. You're all good students. It's okay. It's okay. Amanda Rustick, very interesting. This is not what the angle you usually take on stories. Susie misunderstands Randy in the same fashion that everyone else in the small valley town must misunderstand her. So like Nicole, you're sort of connecting her and Randy as being more similar than different. And truth be told, sometimes we keep away. Sometimes people who are like us scare us, because the things that scare us about ourselves, we see in that person, we find it scary and we want to keep away from. Oftentimes things you hate in others are the same things you hate in yourself. Susie misunderstands Randy in the same fashion that everyone else in the small valley town must misunderstand her, for the way she goes through men and says she feels lonely all the time. Susie, to me, just didn't have any recognition of others and is unable to see others for what they truly are. And that is what hinders her from making any genuine connection in the story. Susie also repeats that Randy is so evil for hunting all these animals with a bow, which is definitely more violent. However, Susie hunts men and makes men confused and upset, real people with feelings and emotion. So the reason Amanda, who's always surprising me with her writing, surprised me with this is because Amanda usually takes a kind of a feminist angle on stories, usually in support of the female characters, which are always pretty easy to support because men are always often acting like jerks in stories and in plays and poems and in history towards women. But you kind of, Amanda, I love that. You're you here. You're not just sticking with a particular point of view just because it's an ideology. You're bringing your own self to every story. So good. And you've all done that very much this semester. So anyway, Amanda, so your comments were very surprising, but also got me thinking that Susie and Randy are more alike. In many ways, Susie is a hunter of men. And whether that's good or bad, again, that's my question, that none of you really brought that up. We're sort of programmed to assume that you stay with someone forever. And maybe that's not natural. I'm going to say that again. That's something that we should at least think about, right? That's something we should at least think about, whether you stay with someone forever. If you have a happy marriage for 10 years, but then it's not working and you get divorced, is that a failure? I don't think so, right? You had 10 good years with that person. Maybe we should see that as a success, right? Maybe we should see that as a success. This is worth thinking about, right? One of the things about being an educated person, which you're all on course to becoming, is calling cultural norms into question. And you don't have to get rid of them all, but they should be called into question, right? And I think lifetime relationships is a good one to call into question. I, for one, have no interest in, forming another relationship. My wife and I have been together coming up on 11 years. In a great 11 years, and I think we're good. I have no interest or the energy to go finding anyone else, dear, in case you found this YouTube video out there. Okay, hon. So good comments. Thank you very much to the 4 of you for those remarks. So a very interesting story to me, and it really gets at something I'm very interested in, because I see human beings as a part of nature, not apart from nature. And that is not how we are raised, and that's not a part of our culture. Again, we live in a Judeo-Jewish, Judeo-Christian culture. No matter if you're a believer or if you're a Muslim or a pagan or Church of the Bicycle, right? Our culture is heavily influenced by the Garden of Eden story, which we talked about in other contexts. And the Garden of Eden story, Adam is given the power by God to name all of the things in nature and is given dominion over the animals. So it's very clear that human beings are here and nature is here. But I think that is very flawed and dangerous thinking, and it leads to us abusing nature and not realizing what we do to it. Today's the Saturday closest to Earth Day. It's not quite Earth Day, but I guess it's Earth Week or Earth Month. And we're a part of it, and everything we do is influencing on it, and that is influencing to us, and we fill it with plastics and pharmaceuticals, which are all in our body, right? There are elements and things in our body that you would never find in someone's body 100 years ago, because the chemicals and radiation didn't exist, but it is in our cells. So I love any story that calls into question human beings being apart from nature and makes very clear that we are a part of nature, that we are much more similar to animals than we are to non-animals, I don't know, plants, but we're very much closer to being animals than I think we care to admit most of the time. So anyway, let's just look at a couple of passages here, and then we'll move on. There's no reason to beat a dead deer here. And it's funny, our narrator wants to convince kind of Susie to be with Randy. Susie, honey, I started to say, I have no idea what I was going to say after that. Something to defend Randy, I think. But then I stopped because Randy turned and looked at me for just a second with fury, terrible fury, which I could feel as well as see, even in my drunkenness. Now, what you feel, how do you feel someone else's fury? Yeah, you feel someone else's fury. I mean, there is so much going on inside of us as animals, in what some psychologists call our system one, which is not our rational thought. It's responding to stimuli without even knowing we're responding to stimuli in our environment, having reactions to people that we don't even think about, right? And so he has this sort of visceral reaction to Randy's fury that he's feeling from him. But then the polite mask came back down over him, and we continued down the road in silence, the antlers on our heads bobbing and weaving, a fine target for anyone who might not have understood that we weren't wild animals, while they are animals. And this crew, I think, is a pretty wild bunch of animals. Yeah. But very good. So I think we'll just leave it at that. I won't take up too much of your time with these videos. Our semester is coming to a close. Very sad to see it go. I love the little short stories class, and you guys have been absolutely fabulous in the virtual classroom and on the discussion boards and your papers, and we're almost done. So we have just a couple of stories left. We're ending the semester with what is my favorite, Goodfellows. And of course, in this week's virtual classroom, we're talking about Flannery O'Connor's Revelation. So get your final papers in about what you learned in the class. Again, don't try to write about everything you learned. Focus on one thing. Did you learn about relationships? Did you learn about nature? Did you learn about love? Did you learn how to become a better reader of stories? Did you become a better reader of people? So have a focus, right, for your last 3-page paper about what you learned in the class. And I'll be putting up the last exam real soon. So we will see you around, folks.